Good morning, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Monday. It is the 26th day of May, 2025, and there's many stories in the news on this Memorial Day, which is the unofficial first day of summer here in the United States. Stories that we could go to about what's taking place in the world that fits with what the Bible has to say with respect to our world and what it's going to look like at the time of the end of the age before the second coming of Jesus Christ and the many predicted events that will precede it. We're going to zero in on four stories, and the operative word here is going to be confusion. I feel like we're at the Tower of Babel after the languages were confounded by the Lord, according to Genesis chapter 11, where basically no one could understand each other. No one made sense. That's why they had to separate in different groups. And this morning, as you'll see, not a lot of sense is being made. So we're trying to get cut through the confusion here and tell you where we're at right now. All right, the first story. This is new. Come across the wire this morning. Israel rejects Hamas's proposal for the release of five hostages. This is from the Jerusalem Post, a new proposal that only adds the confusion. Ben-Gvir sends the Temple Mount on Jerusalem Day, drawing Hamas's ire. This is also from the Jerusalem Post. This is a huge story on two levels, and we'll talk about it in a minute. And then senior European officials warn the U.S. Iran is stalling negotiations to avoid sanctions. This is an exclusive from the Jerusalem Post, not exactly something we haven't already talked about time after time, but the European nations are now starting to speak up and complaining this is dragging on and Iran is just stalling for time. We'll talk about what all that means. But then Donald Trump says the U.S. negotiators had a good weekend talks with Iran. This is a Reuters story, whatever in the world that means. Okay, let's get to it. Headline number one. Israel rejects Hamas's proposal for the release of five hostages, only five, from the Jerusalem Post. The ceasefire would reportedly come as part of a deal that would include the release of Israeli hostages held by Gazan terror organizations. Israel on Monday, that's today, rejected a proposal crafted by Hamas for a partial deal that would see the release of five hostages. The proposal is very far away from the outline that we are willing to negotiate on, an official told the Jerusalem Post. The proposal was formulated by Hamas and passed on to the U.S. through direct back channel communications. The U.S. then presented the proposal to Israel. Notably, the U.S. didn't say whether it supported the proposal or not. Now, this is interesting what the Jerusalem Post says about this, because there are other media in Israel that said the U.S. actually promoted this and actually, put this forward because they think it's an option. So we'll talk about why it isn't here. Here's why. The proposal included the release of only five living hostages in return for the following points. The IDF would withdraw to its positions from 2 months ago. They got to go back 2 months where they're at, allowing humanitarian aid into all areas of Gaza, continued talks for the release of the remaining living and dead hostages, what was described as some kind of American recognition, also some kind of American recognition of Hamas. The Trump administration opened up a communications channel with Hamas via Palestinian-American businessman and author Bishara Baba, who serves as the chair of Arab Americans for Peace, according to his X or Twitter profile. Trump stated, "We want to see if we can stop it." This talking about the war, of course. "And we've talked to Israel. We want to see if we can stop the whole situation as quickly as possible." And he added that he hopes there'll be good news on that issue. In his first press conference since December 2024, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Wednesday called the offensive in Gaza an unprecedented operation in the history of wars and publicly stated there are 20 hostages still alive in Gaza. He said, "We have returned so far 197 hostages, of whom 148 are alive. 20 are alive. We will return them all," he said. "If there is an opportunity for a temporary ceasefire to return hostages, we are prepared for it," he added. And that's the story. Okay. This brings up so many questions about what's really going on. Again, confusion seems to rule today, just like in Genesis 11 after the Tower of Babel, where people were talking at one another and it didn't make any sense. This seems to what's happening today. We'll keep you posted when we get a better idea of what's going on, because we have conflicting reports of exactly what Hamas offered. Israel said, no, not a chance, because it doesn't fit anything that they've been saying. But this is one of the top stories of the day, so we thought we'd bring it to you, to show the confusion that's still there. Now, this next story is huge, almost led with it, because this has two major, confirmations. of what the Bible has to say is going to take place at the time of the end of our 25 signs. We're near the end. It's basically the sign 8, preparations being made to build a third temple, and sign 5, Jerusalem will be in the hands of the Israelis. Okay. Ben-Gvir, he visits the Temple Mount. It draws the ire of Jordanian foreign ministry, which accused Ben-Gvir of storming Al-Aqsa Mosque. Like one person said, I think I need a new definition of the word storming here, along with a large group of extremist settlers. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir ascended the Temple Mount on Monday as part of a Jerusalem Day ceremony in violation of a long-standing status quo held on the holy site. The Otzma Yehudit chairman was joined by fellow faction members, including Yitzhak Wasserlauf, the Development of the Negev and Galilee and National Resilience Minister, and MK, Minister of Knesset Yitzhak Kreutzer. In a speech given during his visit to the holy site, which is the holiest site in Judaism and the third holiest site in Islam, Ben-Gvir said he was praying for victory in the Israel-Hamas war, the return of all hostages being held in Gaza, and the success of the incoming Shin Bet chief David Zini. The visit drew the ire of the Jordanian foreign ministry, which accused Ben-Gvir of storming the Al-Aqsa Mosque with a large group of extremist settlers, coinciding with the so-called Flag March. The ascent constitutes a flagrant violation of the historical legal status quo and Israel's obligation as the occupying power. This comes from Amman, Jordan, foreign ministry there, because it's the Waqf that are in control. The custodianship of the Temple Mount has been in the hands of Jordan since 1967. We've talked about this before after the Six-Day War, which again today is the 58. Is it 58? Yeah, I'm figuring do my math right. It's 1967, 50th anniversary of the liberation of Jerusalem. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the Waqf have been in control the entire time. They're from Jordan, and there's no prayers allowed on the Temple Mount, no overt worshiping of anybody but Allah. You can't worship the God of the Bible. You can't worship the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And so the status quo says the Jews can't even pray there, yet Ben-Gvir goes up there and prays. Okay, why is this story important? Here's why we emphasize this. Two reasons. Number one, the Temple Mount is ground zero or center stage for events that are going to take place according to last day's Bible prophecy, the abomination that causes desolation, Matthew 24:15, where there is a stoppage of the sacrifices in the temple that still hasn't been built. And when that takes place, the stopping of the sacrifices, Jesus said, Matthew 24:21, there's going to be a great tribulation at that time, such as never happened or never will happen. And that's going to start the last part of the final 7-year period. It's going to happen 3.5 years into this last 7-year period. And so that's why the Temple Mount is ground zero, center stage for these events, because what happens there at some time in the future, and it hasn't happened yet, we'll see a countdown, 1,290 days to the second coming of Jesus Christ, according to Daniel chapter 12 and verse 11. Okay, we deal with this in great detail. In our book, 25 Signs, we're near the end. Sign number 8. Preparations are being made to build the third temple. We've just done a 4-part video series on that that's under Your Bible Questions Answered. So we want you to check that out too, because there's a lot of material that's there on the subject. We also have a whole book on the subject, The Jews, Jerusalem, the Coming Temple. So we've done plenty of things for you that are resources that you can look at and understand really what's going on. They're all free from our website, Educating Our World. Please take advantage of them. But whenever we see the Temple Mount in the headlines, it is huge, and particularly huge because of today. Today is Jerusalem Day. It's the 58th anniversary. It was June of 67. This is from the Israeli calendar, 58th anniversary of the liberation of the city of Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, where the Israelis basically got the old city back, the Golan Heights, the mountains of Israel, the Mount of Olives, that whole area. And they've had those ever since. This is, again, 1967, 58 years ago today, according to the Israeli calendar. So this is a major story. We'll talk about the Jerusalem Day and what happened in June of 67 in our second edition of Breaking News Today and the significance of that. Plus, we'll probably do a summary of all the main stories that are going on, ones we haven't even talked about this morning, because there's so much, and kind of summarize it. Today, again, in America, is kind of an off day. People are coming back from a 3-day weekend and that, and so it's rather slow in one sense, but in another sense, a lot's going on. So anyway, we're going to see that the next story confirms what we have been saying all along with respect to the negotiations. So we shift gears and we talk about what the Europeans have said now. Senior European officials warn the U.S. Iran is stalling negotiations to avoid sanctions. It's from the Jerusalem Post. It's not exactly rocket science to say this, but they're actually coming out and saying it now after the fifth round of negotiations that still haven't produced. Well, we don't know what they produced. They're still secret. And we'll see what the next story. Supposedly it's going great. What's going great? We just don't know. Anyway, senior officials from the E3 countries, the United Kingdom, Germany, and France warned the Trump administration that Iran is deliberately stalling negotiations over a new nuclear agreement to hinder the ability to impose sanctions if no agreement is reached, according to several sources familiar with the matter who spoke to the Jerusalem Post. Now, here's the important part of this. Under the 2015 nuclear agreement, this is the so-called JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action that took place under Obama, the member states have the authority to impose broad United States Security Council sanctions on Iran through a mechanism known as the snapback in response to major violations of Iran's nuclear commitments. The option will no longer be available after October because that's the sunset date. In other words, what they stupidly did in 2015 gave 10 years for this to come to pass. And after 10 years, all bets are off. It's called the sunset date, where, okay, now we have to negotiate something new. Any agreement that was made, Iran is not bound by it anymore. So the European signatories made it clear to Iran that if a new and meaningful nuclear deal is not reached by August, they will trigger this mechanism, which would result in extensive sanctions on Iran. In other words, make a new deal, one that we can live with. Otherwise, we're going to do the snapback, and this huge sanction is going to hit you like the United States has done. Europeans told the United States there must be a clear timeline for the negotiations. Otherwise, the Iranians will deliberately stall to create a U.S.-Europe confrontation in an effort to block the use of the sanctions mechanism. On Sunday, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi warned if the Europeans activate the snapback mechanism established under the nuclear deal, Iran will respond forcefully. Well, we'll see about that. Now, the core disagreement, of course, between the sides, as we've talked about over and over again, revolves around uranium enrichment. While the Trump administration has made it clear they will not allow Iran to enrich uranium under a new agreement, Iran insists it has the right to enrich uranium for its civilian nuclear energy program. A senior U.S. official told the Jerusalem Post after Friday's talk in Oman between Trump's envoy and the foreign minister of Iran that some progress has been made, but there's still work to be done. The talks were constructive, and both sides agree to meet again soon, the official said. All right, it's unclear what exactly is going on because of the secret negotiation between the U.S. and Iran. We hear they're making progress. It's constructive. Then publicly, the U.S. says no more enrichment of uranium. On the other hand, Iran says our red line is we have to be able to enrich uranium. It's a non-starter. So what's going on, God only knows. Well, finally, the next statement of Trump only adds to the confusion. Headline number 4, Trump says U.S. negotiators had a good weekend with Iran. This is from Reuters. He said on Sunday, yesterday, U.S. negotiators had very good talks with the Iranian delegation over the weekend as he seeks a deal to prevent Tehran from developing a nuclear weapon. I think we could have some good news on the Iran front, Trump told reporters at the Morristown, New Jersey airport as he prepared to return to Washington after a weekend at his Bedminster Golf Club. He said serious progress has been made. Now, he didn't elaborate on the talks in Rome between U.S. Special Envoy Witkoff and the Iranian delegation. I don't know if I'll be telling you anything good or bad over the next 2 days, but I have a feeling I might be telling you something good. What in the world does that mean? We have no idea. So, again, we have this confusion as to what exactly is going on. And there's so many things now that are, stories that are contradictory. Here's the good news, and here's what we always do here on Breaking News. We start first and foremost with the Bible, which tells us what will eventually happen in the world with respect to Israel, with respect to the Middle East, Russia, Iran, Turkey, etc. The lack of the United States being a player, of China being a player in the last days. We know all this from Scripture, who's going to be center stage. Do we know where it's going to end up? How it's going to get there, when it's going to get there, we have no idea. And the stories get, sometimes contradictory and confusing as we bring them to you here every day. But the good news is it's moving on to what Scripture says. That we do know. The players are finding their places on the chessboard, as it were. and on the stage of the world. And sooner or later, it's all going to come, fall into place. And so, in the meantime, we bring you what's taking place. Again, there's a lot of confusion. A lot doesn't make sense. We've had contradictory stories already this morning about this Hamas proposal, whether the U.S. is for it, whether they're against it. And again, so much we just don't know. But we'll bring you the latest, and we'll again try and get to the core of what's going on. But the bottom line here is simply this: Israel is 58 years after the liberation of Jerusalem, center stage in the world. They are, again, as we've talked about, Israel continues to be in the headlines. It's a little small nation. They continue to be, hated by the world. And all of these are signs of the time of the end. So again, we'll get back to you with what's going on when we know more. I'm Don Stewart. Again, thank you for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.